today, I'm going to I'll lay out the agenda that we're going to cover. Um, just a reminder that, if you want to tell your friends, colleagues about us, they can join these meetups through this link. It's meetup.com, data driven. So tell anyone and everyone, because Lauren is going to be a regular on these sessions. So we're really excited to have her. All right, so the presentation today, guys, is all on advanced formatting, part 2. Okay, what you're going to see in the next couple of months is that there's a lot of really good stuff in some of the topic areas that we've covered over the last few months, and we're going to kind of revisit those and be adding additional layers to that. So Lauren had a really good idea to incorporate some new concepts for advanced formatting in this session. So all of our recordings are on YouTube, Zeomatrix, and you'll see some part 2, probably part 3, Lauren, potentially, just to continue that learning, that loop of information, right? So you'll hear from Lauren today. Meeting format, guys, this is a webinar. We have opened this up so people can come off mute. So if at any time, if you want to come off mute, if you want to ask a question, you are absolutely open to do that. Otherwise, you can use a chat window to ask questions. I will be monitoring that. We'll have Q&A at the very end, and then we typically send a survey. And I always say this on these calls, if you have ideas, if you have topic areas that you want us to cover, we are obviously open to hearing that from you guys, okay? You guys know me, I'm Stuart Tinsley. I lead our sales team at Zeomatrix. I've been in Tableau 10 years, love data, used to work at Tableau as well. But more importantly, Lauren Cristaldi, she is an expert in this product. She is a remarkable consultant, for the customers that she serves, and she has dedicated her time to be here with you today to cover today's topic, advanced formatting. So this is I think a topic that's very near and dear to your heart, Lauren, making things beautiful and pretty. Team, it's really special. We have Lauren, and we're going to have her for future sessions. If you didn't see her last session, it was all things tabular. That was really great content. So go back and look at that. Okay. Topic today, advanced formatting, part 2. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover some default formatting options that are just standard. You got to know them. You should know them. We're going to get into custom transparent shapes and color palettes. We're going to talk more about containers and gradient backgrounds, it sounds like, Lauren. And then I think at the end, you're going to talk about creating your own layout template. Anything I missed, Lauren, on the topic areas?
Nope. Yeah, we're all good.
Okay.
There's a
All
lot
right.
to unpack within those.
It is. Okay. And like I said before, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. Feel free to come off of mute, can't talk, or reach out to us separately. If you have any questions, we're always open to have conversations and talk through data challenges. And again, everything will be published and posted to YouTube if you want to go back and look at this, which I highly recommend, because if you're like me, I kind of need to watch that video a few times. Lauren, I'm going to pass it to you. I will
Yeah,
stop
sounds good.
sharing, and
Thank you.
floor is yours. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to get a new computer. So let me
Um,
adjust that.
Helen is saying that, Helen, I appreciate that. You've been following the YouTube recordings. That is great. Yeah, they're really good, and we'll have more and more coming. I think Lauren had to drop off for getting her computer squared away. We'll give her 1 second. Yes, we're trying, like and subscribe the YouTube channel. I'll drop it. Let me put that in the link right now. We're trying to be YouTube famous, right? So like and subscribe this
Yeah,
video.
like and subscribe.
I'm joking. I'm totally kidding. Like, doesn't matter. I will get that link right now and put it in the chat window. Lauren, are you good to go on?
Yes. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm good. Okay.
So like last time, I made a workbook. I'm going to publish it on our ZO Tableau public page after this, so you can use all of the custom shapes that I'm making, even some of my templates that I've made, you can reuse them. But yeah, so to start, we'll start with the basics. We're going to talk about default field formatting and keeping fonts consistent. So right here, I just have some examples, and I always suggest, if you can, or if your company doesn't already have one, to create a kind of like design guide so that you can look and say, okay, this is the font we should be using. This is the weight of the font, the color of the font, everything just going in. Because if we go over here and we start bringing out, you can just bring out anything like customer name, maybe some sales. So you can see as soon as I dropped sales in, we already had it in the dollar format. Sometimes it doesn't do that though, or the currency format. If we do the drop down for sales, we go to default properties. This is where we can determine the color for sales. So if we had it, on the measures on the columns and some bars coming out, it would always default to this automatic palette, but we could tell it, do the blue teal, say okay. Bring sales up here. And you also have to bring sales to color. But now it defaults to that sequential color palette. And this way, when you create multiple sheets using the same measure, it'll just remember to use that color every time. The other part of that is this number format. So I've already done this, but you go in, you say currency custom or whatever it might be, and then the number of decimals, and you even change like units. So now it's going to be in the thousands. Last part of that default properties is to use aggregation. So I have it defaulted at some, but we could say, for some values, you want it to be an average every time you bring it out. So just, it's that little thing to, save you some time when you're trying to build a bunch of views. It'll always default to that aggregation or color or format. Then of course, if you want to change fonts or anything, you right click on a value or in the drop down here, takes you to a formatting window. And here you can change, the font for the default, the totals, grand totals, depending. But say, because everything is like out of the box, it's going to be the Tableau fonts or font family. But if you have a certain font that you want to use and you don't want to go through, 100 worksheets or something to change the font everywhere, if you go to format up here, you say workbook, now you can change that font everywhere. Sometimes it doesn't work if you have like a label and you've like gone in and custom changed the font in a certain label. But for the most part, this is a good or an easier way, more time efficient way to do this. So it's like PT mono. Yeah, so now everything is formatted. And it'll do that for the whole workbook. And that's it for that part. Are there any questions?
Like we're good?
Awesome. Let me change back to the Tableau font. Okay, next we're going to get into custom transparent shapes and color palettes. This one is one of my favorite things. So I know sometimes it can be hard to find cool shapes. So like here we have info icons, and shapes are really powerful because they don't take up a lot of space. And if you make a sheet with that shape, like the info icon, you can put in the tooltip what info you want to convey. Instead of like putting it in a text field, it's going to take up room on your dashboard. The easiest way to make the custom shapes is actually in PowerPoint. And Stuart knows I love PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So in here, you're gonna, just go to PowerPoint. You have a blank slide. You do insert, and they have all these free icons, and they're already transparent, which is another part of the battle, is when you look up on Google or something, which I've done in the past, and you just say like, find an info icon. Well, sometimes it's transparent, sometimes it's not, but these are always transparent. And they have a pretty big catalog of different shapes and icons you can find. So yeah, you just pull that out. You can make it any color you want. Go to graphics format. And you can use any of these colors, or if you have, a certain color that you want to use, you can go for more fill and use the eyedropper. And from there, you just right click on that icon or shape, say save as picture, and then make sure that you put it from my Tableau repository. You go to shapes, and then I have another subfolder, but you can make a new folder for them if you want to group them, or just put them anywhere in that shapes folder. And now when we go back to Tableau, we'll go to shape, we'll change that mark to shape, more shapes. And you can see all of these shapes in here now. So you can use them, just by themselves or in different charts if you want to use different shapes. Any questions?
That's really cool, Lauren. So you could have all kinds of logos at different, parts of the journey in dashboards and worksheets.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Okay, next. Okay, color palettes. So I don't know if anyone has ever looked up their preferences file. But if you go and you have to open this with other. You look up like a text editor or notepad. If you open this has all of the hex codes that make up the different color palettes that are in your Tableau desktop. So here you would just copy from this line color palette all the way down, and you paste, and you can put new hex codes in. So I have a few of these that I've made that were custom. And basically it just makes it so it's an option to have that custom. So you don't have to go and use the color dropper every time and like manually change each color for each measure or dimension. And this is a good example. Like instead of going in here and having to use the color dropper for these different categories, you can see some of my custom palettes where I can tell it I want it to be this color or any of those custom colors that I already have in there. That's a good time saver too. And that actually brings us to the next part.
Lauren, very quickly, Patricia just requested, could you show that one more time?
Oh yeah, I feel like I'm going really fast. Maybe I should not be drinking a Celsius while I'm trying to do this. But so with the preferences file,
Patricia, would it be helpful to start there at the preferences part? Yeah, why don't we start there?
Yeah, so this is your preferences file, and actually so what I do is I go up here, I would copy from where it says color palette to color palette, make a new line, paste it. Then you'd say where it says name equals, you change this to like, I'm just gonna call it the DDC. In the type, you can do either regular, which would just be like your regular colors, kind of like what I was showing, or categorical, which is also, it's similar to regular, or sequential, which is when we have a continuous measure and you want to say like sales from 0 to 1,000, and it has that color range based on that. That would be your sequential. And you just go in and you know, change the hex codes to whatever hex codes you'd want. And if you do file save, it'll save that new color palette that you added. You do have to close Tableau and then reopen for it to render. It's not like the shapes where you just say reload shapes and it'll show up. But that's a good thing to note. Just if you're not seeing it, it's not you. You just need to close Tableau and reopen. Any questions?
I think that was good.
Sweet. So yeah, after like going from the colors, so legends are really useful, but you know, the default legends, when you add them to your dashboard, they can be, I don't know, just kind of, sometimes you want a rounded legend. I've seen those a lot where you don't want that square. It kind of looks a little more polished when you have it as a circle. And unfortunately, you can't change it just by clicking on the legend and telling it, you know, I want it to be a circle instead of a square. Instead, what I do is I make a new sheet. I would just put category up here. Actually, let's do this from scratch. So you take category, I put it on columns. I change the marked circle. Take category again, put it on color. Category again, put it on label. We say entire view. Now we have those rounded legends, but we don't want to see all this other detail. So I just do the drop down. Don't show the header. Do some format. When you right click in the view, do format. And then I always take out my borders just because I think it looks cleaner. And I wish I knew an easier hack to like remove all the borders at once, but unfortunately, you just have to go into sheet and then, you know, select none. Yeah, now all of our divider lines are gone. And they look kind of big right now, but once you put them in the dashboard, like over here, depending on how big the sheet is, they get smaller, which looks a little better. Then if you want it to be more like centered, or you want to change how the legend is positioned, I always use padding. So we could say, I don't want it to be so far to the right. You can kind of take it over a bit. And now it looks a little more centered. The other good thing about this is that if you make any changes over here to the regular legend, so I want furniture to be orange now, it'll change on this sheet and the other one where we're using category as the color. Any questions?
Don't see any questions there.
Awesome. Okay, so now that we're on this page, we can get into some cool gradient backgrounds. I think those are really popular right now, but they make your dashboard stand out a little more without being distracting. So right here, I have a gradient background. It's not as gradient as some of the other ones out there. I have a really good site to use for high quality or high res background images. And these just have all kinds of different gradients and colors that you can use. So you would just download this. Like, let's download this one. Save image. I'll just put it on my desktop. We go back to Tableau and create a new dashboard. Now we pull this image out, or image object out, and we tile it. You would choose that one that we just saved. Sometimes it doesn't quite fit, depending on how big the dashboard is, or maybe it's too small. So I would just always, not fit the image. Center it so that that gradient looks a little bit better. But yeah, you can always play with it. I also remove the padding. 4 is the default outer padding anytime you bring a new object in. And now we have that gradient background. In order to keep that showing, you can't continue to just like tile things. So if we brought in a blank, it's not going to overlay. And I'm usually really against floating, but I found a way to kind of have a more controllable floating. So if you bring out a horizontal container or vertical container, and we just make it the same size, roughly as the background. Now you can start bringing in, other sheets or objects. We'll get rid of the default one. Yeah, now we have this laid out to where you can keep putting things in there and we can control. Whereas sometimes, you use floating and you change the size of the dashboard and everything gets crazy and you have to go through and reposition and size all of your different floating objects. Here, you just have to reposition or resize one object. Another part of this is I like to change the color of that container. So maybe you want things to stand out more. Like on here, where I already have it set up. This is a container where I change the background to be a certain color. It could even be white or something. And then you change that opacity so the background, our gradient background comes through still, but you're kind of highlighting this chart or view. Yeah, I feel like I went through that really fast. So are there any questions on that?
Any questions from the group? I think we're good.
Awesome. So yeah, we started covering those containers. And this is kind of how we would lay out different templates. If I make another dashboard, I'll call this template 4. And it's funny because this workbook was a DDC template that I used. And those of you that were here last month, that you'll notice that it's the same layout and really everything that the last one was, because I just used the same template. It saves a lot of time, and that way everything's consistent. So yeah, if we make that new dashboard, we go to size. I usually make my default size I like to go with, and it really just depends on, the project that you're working on. But I usually go with 1300 by 900 or 1300 by 1000. Just it seems to fit most screens better. Then I start with a horizontal container floating. So right here, I'm going to have a title section. So let's say you have your title in that floating container. Just bring out that text. We'll call it title. Change this to be like semi-bold. Change the font. Now I usually center them. So now we have the title. You can also add some navigation or other objects in the same container. And the other object I think I'd go with is our logo, which I could go and find on my computer and bring it in. But what else is nice is that you can come back to where you already have it. So right here, you click on that and then do, control copy or command copy or C. And then I can paste it over here instead of trying to go and look through different folders. If you already have a floating object that you want to put into a container on a dashboard, so this is a floating object. If you highlight this object, then hit Shift and click it again and drag, you can drop it in that container. Also, if you double click once it's in the container, it will highlight the container as a whole. And we do this drop down to distribute evenly. Now you have everything evenly spaced. So that title is always perfectly in the center. Now we can't really see our logo right now, but if we go to layout and change the background of our horizontal container, I'll do like dark blue. So now you can see that image that we didn't see before. Maybe we change our title to be white. Yeah, so now that's popping out. So yeah, so that would be our title container. And you can go right here in this item hierarchy. And this is helpful if you have a lot of containers and you want to start using like the show hide buttons and you don't know which container it's actually showing and hiding. I like to rename them. So I would call this like title container and then okay. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't always have time to do that. So I don't always do that, but it definitely is the best practice. And if you're planning on making templates, then that's going to save you time when you're bringing sheets into the view that you're actually using for presentations. You'll always have that like nicely organized and everything in the future. Our next section would be our filters. And this is just one example of a layout. We could do either vertical or horizontal layouts. So, sometimes you have one section with your title and then all your filters below it to the left. Then other times you might have like a filter going from top to bottom instead of left to right. It really just depends on what you're laying out. So if you're going to have a bunch of KPIs or like smaller graphs, then I'd say go with the horizontal layout. Or I mean, go with the vertical layout. But if you're going to have really long or wide charts that need a lot of room, like tables with different headers and names that are kind of long, then you want to put a premium on the horizontal space that you have available. So I would put it at the top. See, our next section, we'll do another horizontal, make it floating. And right now we don't have anything in it. So when I don't have sheets in it yet or filters, I just fill it with blanks so it doesn't get absorbed. Because eventually we're going to put all of these into a parent container and then actually tile them in the overall layout. But sometimes, you put a container within a container and it loses itself within the other container. So yeah, just putting those blank objects help define that this isn't just empty, that we want to keep it as a separate container. And a lot of times I like to highlight the filter container. So I'll change the color. We can do like a lighter color or a darker color. Now we have our filter container. So we'll just bring out vertical or horizontal of the final container that you want a sheet to be in. I'll put that in there. So yeah, now we have this worksheet, but we can bring in other worksheets as well so that they're laid out together. You can see our legends are already populating up here in our filters, which is nice that they know where to go if you want legends to be with the filters. Now that we have, so I always, I like to think of it as like three main containers or container groups. So we have our title with our logos and our navigation and everything. And then the next one would be our filters or legends. And finally, the actual views. With all those, take out a vertical container before I start putting in these other containers into it. Like I was saying before, where sometimes it forgets what it's doing and absorbs it. Just put a blank in there for now. We'll highlight these different containers. Do that shift again, click and drag. Highlight, shift and drag. So now they're starting to look how you would expect. Put that one at the top. We can remove that blank container that we don't need. Highlight. And now we're going to take that overall container, shift again, and drag it in. So now we have everything within their proper containers and their sections and laid out how we want. So if we have, I think this one's doing it already, but if we do the drop down, nope. So you can see like these aren't perfectly symmetrical. If you want everything to always be distributed evenly, you would just go to this drop down within the container where you want it distributed evenly, and you select distribute contents evenly. So now every time, regardless of which sheet you're putting in, it'll always be distributed evenly. So even if we, bring in another one, all three of these are going to be even in their spacing. And this title container is a little bit too tall. So we can change the height. I think like 100 would be fine. And do the same for the filter one. I usually make filters about 70. And our last one, we don't really need to fix the height of, as it has all of our charts in it. And it defaults that padding again, so that's another thing to keep in mind. If we go to layout, we can remove that padding. And it gives you a little more space. Do the same for the title. See, now it's calling out these two. Then we have all of our charts down here. I usually leave a little bit of padding on the charts just because, visually we have the title, the filters, and then everything below it is what those things are applying to. Now, if you want to use the same template or you want to lay it out a little differently down here, you would just duplicate. And here we can change how these are laid out. So maybe I want this chart to be on top of the other chart. So now it turned into a vertical instead of a horizontal container. Any questions?
Lauren, it seems like the item hierarchy, like the way you've arranged this, it is pretty straightforward to go back and look at the order of things here. Which I wonder if people are doing, like looking at this item hierarchy. I know that can be useful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I don't always, like I was saying, do that, but it is nice, especially for templates, to
Right.
have that.
Yeah. So when you think about templates, and I know this question comes up a lot because you have these projects, is it you build that initial branded template and then you simply duplicate and add additional worksheets for the other requirements that are separate to the first one?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have like a layout, a general layout that I would use.
Oh,
And then I could change, the colors that I'm using, the font, or this logo. We would
right.
change that to like a customer logo,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
I'm
is a
curious.
lot easier. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
good.
No, I'm curious to hear from the group, like, are people using containers like this? I guess like a thumbs up if you're using containers right now in your workflow. Okay, Phil, yeah.
Nice.
Good. I mean, that's definitely a best practice. And I forget about the item hierarchy as well to know where things are. And this is a great kind of 101 on creating a template too with customization.
Yeah, the other part to add to the item hierarchy. So, when you want, so sometimes, let's see, like on this one from last month. So I have this filter icon, which is actually a hide show filters. So if I hit option, it'll hide or show.
Right.
If we edit that button, it's asking you, well, what do you want to hide and show? So let's say I had, a certain container with different elements in it for one template, but didn't want it in another one. But I did want to apply that hide show and not have to go and find this icon again
Hmm.
to a different container. Well, down here where I haven't named all my containers, I don't like which horizontal container do I want to actually hide and show. So that's where that item hierarchy is nice. You rename and you know exactly which one to select for those buttons.
Interesting. Okay. So you've got that created beforehand and you can just reference it back.
Yeah, exactly. And just change that around. And then also it's not going to freak out when you delete whatever it was hiding and showing before.
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
it already knows where to look.
That's great. Lauren, where does that put you on the presentation? Anything else to share?
So yeah, I went through that really fast.
That's okay.
It'll take
That's good.
longer.
We'll get recorded. We'll record it so people can look back. I guess maybe we can open up for any questions. Maybe have a shorter session today, and I've got an idea maybe where we can take a little bit of the time. But yeah, anyone in the group, if you have questions, feel free to come off mute or use the chat window if there are any specific formatting questions for Lauren. All right, Phil's got one. You can't move things within the item hierarchy, correct? Example, to move an object from one to another.
So actually, oh no, can you not? It's a good question. I've never tried it.
Looks like you can't.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you can't. You can copy them or make them floating or just select them. So if you have something hidden, you can't find it, you just come over here and you can see it's going to highlight. Or if you want to highlight the entire container that something's in,
Yeah.
then you just come over here. That's a good question though. I didn't think about that. That would be nice if you could just move stuff around over here.
Right. Dave, Phil, I think that's your answer. Prove us wrong though, if you find out a different way. Yeah, any other questions from the group?
Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention actually. We create a new sheet. I'm just going to put something random. We go back here. So you have your template, but of course you're going to have new sheets that you're adding in with the new data source and everything. Well, you don't want to have to drag it in, delete, and then have to reapply all the padding and other formatting you did. So if you just highlight like the rounded legends chart object or sheet, you come over here and you highlight the new sheet that you want to add. And there's these little arrows. You hit those and it'll just switch. And it remembers all the padding and the
Ooh,
size and everything that you already had applied, which is nice.
that is really helpful. So that is to say, I'm gonna simplify that. If you go through the process of creating these templates, you've applied padding and a hierarchy of containers, and you've duplicated that initial template and you have new sheets. If you were to drag in that new worksheet, it would not preserve the formatting.
Right, exactly. So let me
Wow.
apply some like crazy padding to this and then, okay. So let's say I wanted this chart to have 20 padding and I always want this chart to have 20 padding,
Yeah.
regardless if it's a different one. So now if I add in accessories, this also has 20 padding since I swapped it. But if I just bring in this subcategory, you'll see that that padding isn't there.
Hmm. And you have to go back and apply the padding.
Yeah, exactly. And say like you want to add in, we have 10 different charts that you have on this dashboard.
Yeah.
Well, then you're gonna have to add that padding 10
That's a great
times.
tip. I've never even seen that little icon. It's funny. I've never even noticed that icon. Okay. That is really cool.
Yeah, I think it was in one of the more recent, like in the last year, they added that. Just so nice.
So make sure you have a more recent version of Tableau.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
true.
well, Helen had a good question. She's asking if you could show one of your favorite, what your favorite template looks like. I think she's just a little unclear about the workbook format. How do we save and apply it to all? So maybe I can take some of this for you, Lauren. Well, actually, why don't you answer because this is definitely more of your wheelhouse. But do you have a favorite template that you use that doesn't have data, that's proprietary, I guess?
have these that I made
Yeah.
that I was like playing around in Figma and made this background. But this would be like, so I'm using Superstore right now. But let's say I wanted to change to another data source, like for an actual customer, then I
Yeah.
would just like add in the connection. I would swap everything to only use that one, close Superstore, and I would start creating sheets to swap like we did on the other page. And I would just swap it here.
Okay.
And that way, if you're gonna, like, this is a good KPI template. So I just have all of my current month sale or different KPIs from Superstore right here. You use a grand total calc. I can actually open one of these. So I use this calculation where we're saying the total of this measure. So in this case, orders placed is just a count of orders. And now you can display it in your title instead of having to have separate cards with like trend lines attached to them.
Mhm. Yeah, makes sense. Lauren, Helen asked, I guess more specifically, if I want my filter title to be orange size 10, could I make that a default? Is it possible through the preference file? If you want the filter title to be,
Oh, so the preference file only controls which colors you have access to. So if we pop open this edit legends, it's only controlling these for your options.
yeah.
It can't, because if you change the data source you're using, it's going to forget a lot of the colors. And this is just an easier way to say assign this palette, and then it'll always use that palette. But if on your dashboard you want the filter, like actual object or box, to always be orange, the best way to do that would be to change this background container, because our filters will change, and inevitably we're going to have to go back and say, format all filters when you have new sources of data coming in or new sheets and new filters that you're adding. So if you just change this background of the container, then it'll make sure that behind your filters, they'll always have that background. If that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. I think is another approach, Lauren, that if you're using a specific color, you add that to your preferences file, so it's always there. You make a filter and you apply that color every time.
Right. I will say when you're formatting the filters though, if you go, say we added a new filter, I'm just gonna say drop down. You go to this drop down, customize, or no, sorry, format, and always do the all filters and set controls. That means all the filters and sets that are tied to that data source will be formatted at once. So say we had 5 different filters up here, it's going to format all of these. Actually, let me bring in another filter.
Hmm.
So yeah, now when we go format, all filters, and it changed both of these titles at the same time.
That was helpful. Yeah. I could have used that in the past.
I know, instead of going through every single one and then
Can I ask, does that only apply to that one dashboard or the whole, I guess, one worksheet or one dashboard or the whole workbook?
So this would only apply to this dashboard.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren, if you duplicated that dashboard though, and then subbed in additional filters, would it preserve
Oh,
that?
that's a good question.
Yes, if you're working on your second report and
Oh yeah, it does.
okay.
I guess that's something I hadn't noticed before. That's cool.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Good questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap a little early. Lauren, thank you for this.
Yeah.
We'll have it up, we'll have it recorded on the Geometrics YouTube channel. Yeah, if there are no more questions, we'll see you next month.